So time now to take you through the morning papers, and here with me to review them are Afia Hagan and Nikki Hodgson. Afia here with me in the studio, which is very exciting because normally she's at home. So I've got a little bit of company here. Nice to see you too there, Nikki. Lots of coverage of the fallout from the triple by-elections where people voted on Thursday, and there was lots of poring over it yesterday, and the papers are picking up again on that feeling today, aren't they? So let's deal with some of those front pages. Afia, you've chosen The Guardian first of all, and their headline is "Shattering Defeats for Tories in Cry for Change." That's quoting Keir Starmer there, I think.
Yeah. I actually think that all three parties will think that they have won in some way from this by-election, because you did have that huge Labour win, overturning Selby and Ainsty there, you know, a 20,000 vote that they overturned. That is pretty impressive. But of course you did have the Liberal Democrats doing really well as well. And then of course you had the Conservatives only narrowly keeping Uxbridge. Now it could have gone a different way. You could have had the Conservatives losing all three, or you could have had much more success for Labour. But I think every single party will take something away from this and see it as a positive. But I must admit that I do agree with Rishi Sunak when he said Westminster's been acting like the next election is a done deal. The Labour Party has been acting like it's a done deal. The people of Uxbridge just told all of them that it's not. And I think that is absolutely pertinent, because when we have these by-elections, we always say, if there was a general election tomorrow, this is what happened, that's what would happen. But this shows us that absolutely we cannot predict where the next election is going to go. So all parties, from Labour right through to Conservative, Greens, whoever, need to realise that they absolutely need to double down on their efforts to really persuade voters to come out for them and vote for them if that's what they want. And I think, you know, what we are seeing is what happens when a party in power has consistently done badly, is that everybody feels politically homeless. And I think there's a real sense of that at the moment, that traditional Tory voters don't vote for them, traditional Labour voters feel homeless and don't vote for them as well. And I really think we are going to have to see a real doubling down from all across the political parties. I do think there was a quick pushing through of the migration bill this week that probably gave the Tory party a little bit of a boost, and probably why they took Uxbridge. But yeah, doubling down across the board if people really want to win in the next election.
And you're absolutely right that you can't extrapolate from by-elections to a general election, though. Journalists like us always want to try to look for signs. And Nikki, you picked out the Times. Certainly, even if you can't, you can learn some lessons, can't you? And according to the Times, Rishi Sunak, pleased to win that Uxbridge by-election. There was a suggestion that he may well lose all three, but obviously delighted that they managed to scrape a win there in Uxbridge, and seeing that it appeared to be this single issue of the extension of the ULEZ zone, this low emission zone in Uxbridge, that won it, and he's looking to see whether he can do something similar in other areas.
Yeah, so this is touched upon by the Daily Mail today as well, this idea that Rishi Sunak now has to take a gamble, he has to take a risk, and he has to move further to the right. He has to satisfy more of the hardline Tories in his party and more of the hardline voters that are out there. And they're seeing this win in Uxbridge, this frustration with ULEZ, as a sign that people don't want more environmental policies. They want strict policies on boats. They want strict policies on immigration in general. Obviously, the immigration bill is passed now. So it's interesting that both the Times and the Mail are going in this morning and saying this is what he's planning on doing. It sounds like that's been leaked by an aide or something. He hasn't come out and said it himself at all. But obviously he's got to differentiate himself from Labour. If Labour are doing so, he's got to clean up where there are other voters that are not being catered for. So that is what he's going to have to do next.
Well, yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And let's take a look at the Mail, shall we? Afia, their headline is "Go True Blue or Face Wipeout." I mean, there's a slightly different take in the two papers. The Times is talking about wedge issues, these sort of issues that could divide people, and that way of kind of honing in on those single issues as a way of differentiating from Labour. Do you think that could work?
I think perhaps it could work. Yeah, I mean, Nikki rightly pointed out that ULEZ and environmental issues are really becoming a huge sticking point when it comes to people voting as well as migration. Those are huge issues. And I think, people are obviously going to think about these when we get to the ballot box. The migration bill, as we said, was pushed through on Tuesday. And I definitely think that was done very deliberately and very quickly. So it could look like the Conservative Party were in control. We're taking control of migration. We're trying to do something to, the separate issues of stopping the small boats. And then, of course, bringing migration numbers down because we have problems with infrastructure, space, and all the rest of it. Climate change, again, a huge issue. But people are thinking to themselves, what are true Labour values? What are true Conservative values? And I think a lot of those are kind of swapped over from party to party. There's a lot of grey area. Things are not as, red and blue as they always have been.
And on the Daily Mail article, Nikki, they are focusing on house building and tax cuts, but we've had a real clear message from the Chancellor, haven't we, not to expect tax cuts given the economy and given what happened under Liz Truss.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why the Tories have been running scared of tax cuts. But tax cuts are essential, really, for Tory policy. They're kind of, the bedrock of why people vote for the Conservatives, low taxes. And so many voters feel that they've just been ignored and kind of cut off because of the way tax cuts haven't been implemented. But, I think the reality is we live in a very different world to the world we lived in 10 years ago, to the world we lived in more than 13 years ago when the Tories came into power. Both Brexit and COVID have created seismic changes in our society and our economy. So the things that once worked for the Tories aren't necessarily going to work for the next 10, 20 years. And I think that voters are struggling to get their heads around that traditionally they've been the party of low taxes, but maybe they're just not what they're going to offer now because we can't get out of the economic hole we're in with them.
OK, let's move away from politics, shall we, to the front page of The Sun, which is not very cheerful. Their headline is Hell Hole, and I think they're drawing together lots of different stories, aren't they? Not least the fact that the roads might be chaotic today because of the weather, but we've also got train strikes as well. It's all about the summer getaway now that the school's broken up.
Yeah, and this is a traditional story that comes around every single year at the same time. The traditional summer getaway is an absolute nightmare. So you're right in saying there's lots of different things at play here. There's inclement weather that we are having, 3.5 inches of rain, which is probably the total amount for July is going to fall over this weekend.
Great.
Yes, very cheerful. Lots of people trying to get away on summer holidays. So the ports of Dover will be very busy. A lot of people complaining that Dover is too small, that it can't cope with the volume of traffic that it's going to have. You have train strikes as well. You have 5-mile tailbacks on the M25. 12 million people set to hit the roads. 2 million people going abroad. So airports are going to be very busy right up and down the country. Eurostar terminals are very busy as well. But actually, it's the first weekend of the summer holidays. There is going to be an uptick in people travelling. We should expect it to be busy. If it wasn't, it kind of wouldn't make sense. We get this story every single year, and I actually think that over the past couple of years, it's been even worse because, remember the times when you had to vaccinate before you went, and you had to quarantine when you get back, and there was red list, green list, blue list, black list, all the lists. You had that to contend with. So I think we've kind of ramped up on this kind of rhetoric of the beginning of the summer holidays is always chaos. Look, it's always going to be a bit busier than it was last weekend because people are going away. I think people just have to get on board with that.
I guess so, and if people want to go on holiday, they'll find a way of getting there, won't they? Nikki, what do you think about this? I mean, what I always love about these stories is you always get the advice, stagger your journeys. Like you're going to phone everyone else up that's travelling and say, when are you going? But what do you think about the coverage of it? I mean, it's a fair point to make, though, a fair warning to make. When there are rail strikes, you're going to get more traffic, and if the weather's going to hamper things. But is it just common sense?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's common sense. I think Afia's completely right. We do have this story every year. I think it's quite interesting tactically from the Sun to run this story when they could be talking about the by-elections and they've chosen not to. And I mean, that's about not tiring people out with hard politics. I know what the rub's there. But I think, you know, by this point in the life cycle, most people have figured out how the traffic works and figured out that if it's school holiday season, everything's going to be busier. You know, we had so much reporting last year about how airports were in chaos, and that was because of you know, the amount of staff that have been sacked during COVID. So at least that has dropped off the agenda now, and we're just back to general busyness at summer holiday season.
Absolutely. And Nikki, I know you wanted to talk about the Mirror's front page as well. Roar us on. And of course, England's Lionesses due to run onto the pitch in just under 4 hours, 3.5 hours or something, 10:30 I think the kickoff is, for their first match against Haiti. And this is something to do in the bad weather, is it? Sit and watch the football.
Oh my gosh, that's what the football's for, isn't it? To get us through the poor British end of summer. Yeah, this is fantastic. The Lionesses will play today. They're becoming our national heroines, aren't they? You know, there's so much love for them. I know lots of younger female footballers who are inspired by them and will be watching with their teams today. And I just think, yeah, it's fantastic that they're finally getting the coverage that they deserve.
Well, that's right. And are you interested in the football at all, Afia?
Absolutely. I've got an 11-year-old daughter who loves women's football. We go and see Arsenal ladies quite a lot at the Emirates, and it's always such an amazing atmosphere. That's what we really enjoy about it, as well as the football as well. And I think since 2019, where the Lionesses placed 4th in the World Cup, and I think that was the year for me personally where I really got into women's football. Remember, we had the USA team who were so glamorous, Megan Rapinoe and all that, and really got into it. And here we are in 2023, a bigger competition, 32 teams taking place. And I think since our success in the Euros last year, where we beat Germany, we've been building and building upon that. And it's really exciting to see, first of all, the women's game getting the respect that it deserves, getting the coverage that it deserves as well. And in 2022, only 63% of girls had the opportunity to play football when they were teenagers. And the Lionesses have really helped people get more inspired, helped football teams spring up, helped football teams continue, helped young women stay interested in the sport. And I think that's super valuable beyond, you know, the matches that we're going to see in this tournament. However well that they do, lots more young women are going to stay inspired, and that's amazing.
Absolutely. That's so true. We mustn't put too much pressure and expectation on them and just enjoy their performances, but let's hope they do really well. Yeah. Anyway, Nikki and Afia, love to have you on, and we'll be joining you again in another hour's time. So don't go too far away. All the top stories coming up next.